Hello, I'm Steve. A little about myself. I'm a retired law enforcement officer with 20 years of service. I began my career in the jail, worked the road, and became an investigator. During my career, my training consisted of everything from SWAT to becoming a state certified crime scene technician. I've investigated crimes from thefts to homicides. After retiring and becoming aware of true crime and web sleuths, I started my channel for web sleuths to better understand the perspectives of law enforcement. Not only do we cover true crime, I go out into the field and assist families who have lost loved ones to homicide and their cases are considered cold. Join me as we look and bring attention to these critical cases.
Hello, everyone. Thank y'all for being here tonight. If you're new to the channel, welcome. Normally, during our shows, Mrs. Steve is my wife is sitting here with me, and she organizes and puts down the questions and highlights them. So at the end of the show, so that I can answer all the questions. But tonight, she's won't be with us, and so I'll be flying solo. And so you just have to bear with me a little bit during our presentation. Uh, and during this presentation, always be mindful while you're in chat, be respectful of families, mods, and each other. We'll have a presentation of slideshow, after which, and during the slideshows and the video that I'll be showing tonight, I will be taking breaks and trying to keep up with chat. And we'll see how the challenge goes and see if I'm able to keep up with everyone tonight. If I miss anyone that supports the channel in any shape, form, or fashion, donations or any of that, I apologize now, because normally, like I said, I is not Mrs. Steve normally keeps up with all that and does an excellent job. And so just bear with me tonight, guys, and I appreciate it. We're going to be discussing, of course, something that on this case with of the Libby and Abby homicide in Delphi, that prior to Richard Allen being arrested, I had went out into some of my property that is wooded and recreated a crime scene along the lines of what CSI, as a CSI investigator, would go and the challenges he would face in an outdoor scene, both daylight and night. And I documented it. And I did this back in September 27th, which tomorrow will be the anniversary of 1 year anniversary. And I went into the woods and did some blood spatter using synthetic blood and doing some testing to demonstrate to my community and to put some information out there on YouTube so that people could have a better understanding of the challenges that we face from the CSI aspects of it. It's not like what you see generally on TV as far as everything flows pretty good. Everything is collected, and the bad guys always found immediately within just a few minutes of the end of the show. And which, like I said, real world doesn't behave in that manner. Sometimes it is fast track, and a fast track homicide case may be something like we saw in Idaho, and with just a matter of months solving a case of a co-murder. Or then we see the other side of the spectrum where cases are never solved. And then we have the cases in between, such as with what happened and is currently in the court system with the Delphi homicides. And so, anyway, I wanted to make sure that we will be looking back at the and addressing some of the crime scene changes that have happened and occurred in this last year, for the fact that part of our CSI training, we always work. And back when I first started getting into taking all the training to get that qualification, being state certified, we had to operate with real blood. And there's certain safety issues when you're working with real blood. And now they have synthetic blood, and I work with that a little bit safer. But is that when we work with those product or that blood product back then, we'd go out, set up a crime scene, and while we were there for our 3-day course, 1-week course, or a 2-week course, that was the only time that we were able to visit that crime scene and do any type of testing, collections, documenting, and of that nature. So I was never exposed to the long-term 1-year process. Never, So now, since I trying to become an ambassador for law enforcement, I took it upon myself to go out and create that and to answer questions not only for myself but for the my community and for the web sleuths out there, so we have a better understanding. And so just bear with me. Let me go into chat right quick before I get too far behind and see if there's any questions, and we will get that taken care of. And like I said, you just have to bear with me. And if you're new to the show, like I said, normally we're a little bit better organized. Let's see here. Looking good so far. And like I said, if you have any questions about this case and about some of the of whatever I'm going to be putting out there with my slideshow, absolutely throw a question in there, and I will get to it as soon as I can. And I'll be learning this process, and I'll try not to miss too much that's going on. And Emerald City. And okay. All right. Let me get to. All right. It looks like Kamala Norris gave some memberships, and here's Blue Light. Thank you, Kamala Norris. Thank you for your support. It means a lot to us and allows us to do things that we could not do without you. And so, with that being said, let's get into the presentation a little bit. Some of the things of this crime scene that I just took, went back up there, that within this crime scene, when I originally went up there and created it, I did all different types of transfers of tool impression, hand transfers, weapon transfers of blood, of the synthetic blood to different surfaces. And I also did tool marks of where I did cutting on the limbs. On these tool marks here, you see these little straight lines. Those are knife cuts of the weapon I was using up there when I created it way back in 2022. And you can, on this limb here, which you'll recognize this limb also from a recent video I did about collecting the limbs and placing them on the mannequins, which I did just yesterday or day before, and creating that recreation of that crime scene. And so my crime scene area now has been totally in disarray, and everything's been tossed and turned. But on this limb here, way back then in 2022, I did, like I said, place some tool marks on that limb, and also for purposes of showing what luminol would indicate that if there's any type of transfer stains from a weapon, from a hand, and also even from the edge of a weapon that is making these cut marks on the wood, and from those tool marks, that what would the signature be from the luminol? And if you want to see all of that, go back. I don't know if Mrs. Steve has put the link in there to September 27th of 2022, that video, and go watch it. And it has all the steps taken of processing that scene at that particular time. And like I said, this is pictures I made this week of the crime scene that I created back behind me. And these are the pictures from 2022 of tool marks, a different part of that limb, but still same part of a general area. And some of the tool marks, slash marks I made on it. And now you can see, even from a year later, that these are the same, are very visible and identifiable even a year later. And so if any type of tool marks such as this had occurred absolutely, it would be something identifiable. And but whenever CSI arrives at a crime scene, there's a lot of things that have to be taken for the fact that by the time an investigator arrives at any scene to even find any of the evidence that we're going to be looking at tonight, that scene has been visited and been found usually by someone outside of law enforcement. Happens all the time, and a lot during hunting season when hunters go into the woods, and they may find victims that have been um, dumped, abandoned, discarded in certain areas, and it becomes to the attention of law enforcement through those 911 calls. But in this case with Delphi, that wasn't the case, and that there was a orchestrated, unified search by the community to go out and look at the time for missing girls. No one expected during those search parties that anything such as a homicide had occurred to the children. And it turns out to be, of course, that's the worst case scenario did come to pass. And we had the civilians make contact with law enforcement, and law enforcement arrives on the scene and would go in and secure the area, start separating witnesses, beginning the step process of having other officers come to support, and creating different types of logs and getting reports from witnesses of what did you see, where did you go, what did you touch. And there's a lot of steps and a lot of chaos early on in those first minutes and hours of an investigation. It's nothing simple. It takes a while to get everything under control. And but once everything's under control, then when by the time the investigators get there, it should be rolling along towards a more of a controlled environment. And this controlled environment, especially in outdoor scenes, becomes more difficult the later in the day that a discovery is made. And especially if it turns out it is going to be something as horrible and tragic as a homicide, for the fact that you're not able to go into any homicide scene and process it like you see on TV in 45 minutes. You're lucky to get processed in 45 hours. And that's more realistic than most. And then you might as well just double that, and that'll give you a pretty good time frame of trying to get everything in control. And then you're hampered by, of course, the light conditions. That's through those 48 hours or 4 days, ever how long it takes you to process it. You also have the threats of weather coming in and controlling the scenes in low light conditions. And but even those low light nighttime conditions, you have to make the most of the crime scene. And what can be done at night is what some of the things I did for this case that we're going to be talking about and looking at from the alternate light sources, and how we use those, that you embrace whatever the obstacles you're given in a crime scene. Sometimes some of those things you embrace and absolutely use them to further the investigation. And that's some of the things we're going to be talking about tonight, about some of the challenges that occur at night. And with that being said, before we go in there, I'm going to stop my camera, and we're going to start, and we're going to look at that. This is how normally when we respond to an outdoor scene, that the officer will be called to a certain location. He will usually meet a witness or whoever discovered something on a roadway, line side or something, and they'll walk into an area. And the officer should take note of the way that they go in and come out, and so that all future officers arriving will be taking a similar path. Now, if this path is a well-known path and is possibly used by not only the victims but the suspects, you may look at alternative ways of coming in. That you may have a clearly distinguished trail but you may want to sidestep it and go off 20 or 30 feet right or left of that trail, and then create such a path as this using whatever type of tape, and just tape it off. And you'll create these corridors that all responding officers will stay within these parameters. And that way, if you have, regardless of the way that the offender may have come in and may have left, that the chances that you're going to be on that absolute same path when you cordon in corridors made such as this, that the likelihood of totally destroying all the evidence is greatly lessened. And so we use this type of corridors to employ it. But then now you get to see that where the importance of this is at night. That it's easy that when you're working with limited light sources and you're going into the darkness and you're walking, that if it's several hundred yards, people get lost. And this ensures us that the officers will stay within the corridors and they'll walk through there. And this is just a normal white light. And this is probably the worst scenario that you can have. But as long as you have these corridors, because a lot of injuries and a lot of things happen at night in low light conditions. I've been there, seen it. You can twist ankles, you fall, there's stump holes. And so a lot of issues are through here. But like I said, as you approach the crime scene, and I took it to another step that here in just a few minutes, you're going to see that once you get into an area that you're looking at, and this is the exact same scene that you saw in daylight earlier from our photographs, but when you get up here and you start looking at the ground and you're trying to identify certain items that may have been found in daylight and are marked, flagged, or otherwise, that you have a sharp edge of what the human eye can pick up at night. This camera does an excellent job in showing that unless it's highlighted within that circle of light, the human eye just misses it. And so this is one of the bad parts and one of the greatest challenges. Now, you can bring in additional lighting, floodlights, and light it up like a football stadium, and you have to do that point. But then we have alternate light sources that you can bring in, that when you use these different light of visible light in the spectrum, that there are goggles and within certain light sources, certain fluids, human body fluids, will luminesce, fluoresce, and will absolutely glow and stand out from any of the background. And so you can use that and under these low light conditions. And plus with red light, when you're using it, um, it doesn't destroy your night vision, so that when we're doing photography and things, that whenever we're setting up cameras and those final shots, the red light is uh, one part of the red light spectrum is absolutely useful and for that fact. And while we're going through that, let me make sure that I'm trying to stay up with chat here again. So as y'all watch this, I will try to get caught back up with chat and see if there's anything going on. But like I said, once again, when you, even with these different light sources, when you're looking at the ground, unless it's within that cone of that light, you're just not going to get to, you miss things. And so there's a lot of things that we have to take and extra measures and make sure that we're slow and methodical. Now with the black light that you'll see here as you go into, there is a lot of things that happen when you're using this type of the visible light spectrum. You'll see a lot of things fluoresce from as you see these limbs and parts of the tree. It can be moss, it can be bone, it can be just in rotted wood that has of a white, just like a white t-shirt will light up. Anything that has those qualities, as you'll see here in a minute, it almost reminds you of the Predator movie of where certain things fluoresces throughout as he changed his uh, visible light settings so that he could track his prey. But it's like I said, there's a lot of different purposes and a lot of things that you can find in a crime scene, either indoors or in a wooded situation such as this. Let's see. Still going through chat, guys, while y'all watch this. I'll try to star some questions while they're going along there. And like I said, I hope I don't miss too many questions. Mm, let's see. All right. Of all the light sources, the 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 um, that you use out there, um, they all have certain uses, and when used with proper and different types of goggles that filter out other light um, um, parts of the light spectrum, that it's not always just the light itself. And like I said, there's goggles that are made, and we'll be looking at some of the of that later on in the presentation. But anyway, I just thought I'd show that to show you some of the challenges. I'll get my camera going back again. And let's see here. Now get back over here and chat and get that going. All right. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Where am I? I'm on that. I'm only 7 minutes behind. I'm getting caught up now, guys. All right. And I'm trying to get a few questions started here so that I can get back to those as we get along. And so I won't get too far behind. All right. Oh, Olivia, too. $5 super sticker. Thank you for that. And I know I see a couple others in there, and we'll get if there was, I'll get to those hopefully, and I don't miss any of them as we go along. Thank you for that support. It means a lot to us, and we'll use it. All right. All right. So I got the 820. So hopefully I didn't miss too much. But now back to the slideshow. But from this outdoor crime scene, like I said, when it's um, in daylight, you make the use of what light's available and as much as possible. And knowing that night is going to be coming, law enforcement would take whatever measures and brings in whatever resources they need in preparation for the other testing that can be done at night and making the best use of whatever challenges they're going to be facing. And it includes bringing canines in. There's a lot of canines that have special discipline now that have uh, through their training and that over the years that has evolved into the crime CSI world. As far as some dogs can recognize and identify certain types of evidence within a crime scene. Absolutely amazing. Um, and of course, we know that some canines were brought in. We don't know what types of canines or discipline that they had, but there's videos within the first day or so of the crime scene of canines on scene and what was their purpose, what did they find, what did they lead to. I have absolutely no clue. And like I said, the red light spectrum, as far as whenever we're out there working a crime scene, and you'll have that red light on to make your adjustments on your camera, to bring into focus whatever you're about to photograph, especially if you're getting preparing for luminol. And because luminol is absolutely one of the greatest things uh, uh, that you can use at crime scene, that on multiple or multicolored back surfaces, broken backgrounds and things. And even when we look at possibly the location of what and identifying of what the F tree was, as far as what may have created that pattern, when was it found? Was it something that was easily seen in daylight, or was it something that had to be first noticed at night with the use of some type of chemical or different types of light? I have no idea, but we'll hopefully we'll find out at some point. And let's see here, but this is the same location that I wanted to demonstrate from uh, in total daylight to what you see that once you're working within a cone of light, and you're totally focused upon just a narrow region of whatever's in the cone of light, of that visible light. As you looking down range, everything else disappears. And this is something that a lot of things can be missed. And like I said, this is under a different type of the light spectrum. And then, of course, the blue. Uh, and then, as I was mentioning earlier, that some of these in the darkness, you have these alternate light sources, and you have this equipment that you can bring to the scene that brings in specific wavelengths. And those specific wavelengths have certain actions on body fluids. Um, and these are different types of body fluids. And when viewed through other filters, special goggles, and things, you will be able to see these body fluids. And like I said, you make the most with what you got at the time. All right. Let me get back over to the chat and see if I'm. All right. That's a good question there. We'll get back to it in a second. What kind of black light are you using? It's just a one of that's specialized. I ordered from Searchy. It's a handheld black light, um, and the it has, like I said, it's important to have because there's certain things that you can see using a black light, and when you use certain filters and things, it's very valuable on the scene. But it's one of the ones from Searchy. Miranda Lee, 499. I'm sorry for loss you. Thank you. That's the reason for everyone that Mrs. Steve is not here. She's upstairs with the other two dogs right now. All right, let me get back up in here. Kamala Nars, $10. How do you determine how big an area to rope off? Blue light special, please. Um, well, it's when the first responding officer arrives on the scene, um, he starts determining what is needed as far as where there may be victims or any visible evidence that he's, such as a weapon, any trails, anything that shows some type of disturbance, or where there might have been some type of altercation and interaction between an offender and a victim. And so when he sees that, of course, he knows that we have to get people out of those areas, move them back, get the crime scene tape in there, and start taping it off. And then, of course, you'll have a secondary perimeter that is far larger, that is set up, that we get everyone out and we put them on that outside perimeter. And you may even have that third layer of where news and the public that gathers is way out there, for the fact that you have to have staging areas of responding officers and relief officers and special units that may come to a crime scene that they're going to meet, and they have to be able to work in peace. And so that has to be set off to an area off to its side to that command setting. And then we have to create where we'll have the an officer that is maintaining a log of who arrives and for what purpose, at what time, and when do they enter in past checkpoints, and as they go in, and when do they leave through that checkpoint. And so there's, like I said, it's total chaos until everything gets organized. But by the time you have that first officer that's looking at all the possibilities within a certain distance of the identified bodies, victims, that then you'll have a second perimeter, and then a third, hopefully, that keeps people even further away. And so by the time you get out there to that third, even if that inner first responding officer was off by 50 or 100 yards, hopefully your second parameter will take care of it, which was not the case in here. For the fact that we have victims, but we did not know where the kidnapping occurred. We didn't even know a kidnapping had occurred until hours and days later, when the video and the picture from that video was released of bridge guy approaching Libyan Abbey on the bridge with that down the hill. And so when you look at it, now you're out 300 to 400 yards. And so now we have a new crime scene, and we have to expand out to that. So it's extremely difficult, and it's hard to maintain. Uh, all right. Mark, good to see you. Thank you. Appreciate your support. I'd get Yeah. Thank you for your super sticker. It means a lot to us. Appreciate it. All right. Let's see. Trying to get. And Calamity, Colleen, thank you for the PayPal. Appreciate it. And very kind of you to say. Thank you. Appreciate your support. All right. Let me get 825. Get caught up here a little bit. I hope that y'all can hang with me as I multitask tonight, guys. All right. Let me get this done. All right. And now let's go to start. I'm going to start answering some questions tonight that's normally not. And as I go through the questions, I'll hit the blue light again for all the support. Olivia, too. Super sticker. Thank you. Was a tree cut with a knife, sticks around. From my understanding, there was only one limb cut, and from the explanation and description given by the defense attorney, he said electric saw. I don't know how, from him looking at, unless he spoke to an expert, and the expert says that this is certain types of burns or something within the cut that identifies it is an electric saw. I don't know what qualified him to be able to say such. We will find out through either the hearing or through court what substantiates that. And like I said, we're going to hit all the blue lights. I go through here again for everybody. Thank y'all. And if a bullet was found later due to foliage partially buried, how would that affect CSI documentation? You mentioned people find things later. Yes, there's always stuff that can come into um, that is missed. Been there myself, guys. Uh, you know, you there's only so many places that you think are even accessible, and then all of a sudden it pops up out of nowhere. Been there, but on this bullet, when was it found? How was it found? Was someone out there metal detecting? Uh, and when was that those steps taken, and why weren't they taken earlier? I don't know what the facts around that bullet being buried and being found, um, but if you go in and look at some of the FBI crime scene processing, there's some videos out there that they'll go into an area that has a lot of ground debris, leaves and limbs, and when they leave it, it is actually almost raked clean. I don't know if that was something that might have led to this. I don't know. Like I said, there's a lot of different possibilities for it. I just don't have the answer for that. But the whenever the evidence is found, it's collected, it's documented, it's photographed, and it'll be presented into court. And then, of course, the prosecution and defense will each have their own story of how that piece of item and that piece of evidence got there. Was it uh, lost later after the crime scene was originally released and someone visited and dropped it? Or is it from the original crime scene? And so each side will make those arguments, and we'll have to see, because I do not know the timeline of when that occurred and the statements made by the defendant, if he'd ever been to the crime scene, and if he's never been there and he made that statement, yet we found a bullet at the crime scene, there's going to be issues there. And there's Mark again. And Gail again. Thank you. Then, if a victim fleeing an offender was already wounded, would that explain said victim being covered or splotched with droplets over the body? It's possible. And for the fact that blood spatter, not splatter, spatter, blood spatter and blood stain evidence and blood flow, passive blood flows, all of them have characteristics that can be identified of how gravity affects, how interactions with hands, flailing, strikes, everything that has contact with blood and then travels in any direction can create certain types of identifiable blood stain and blood patterns. And through that blood pattern analysis, we're able to identify a lot of things that go on, from their injuries to that if they touched an injury and then touched a certain part of their anatomy, are there certain transfers? And then we have where they could be from the size of the droplets, showing that, well, we have something that was occurring here that caused intermediate velocity blood spatter, which are smaller droplets than low velocity. And then you have your high velocity blood spatter, which takes things such as gunshots or some type of impact weapon that can create a tremendous amount of energy and speed that can have those mid velocity and high velocity types of blood spatter. And for that to occur, and like I said, it tells a story. So there's a lot of stuff from the blood that's seen on a victim that can uh, tell a story and a tale about what happened at the crime scene. Yona says, did you ever have nightmares from crime scenes you investigated? No. The only nightmares that, by the time you are working this type of cases and you see this type of things, you've seen, time of your investigations, from your time spent on the road, if you're 10 years plus, and that's something you have to remember about most law enforcement officers out there that work the road. They've seen dozens, if not hundreds, of victims through car accidents, natural deaths, responding to unresponsive persons in homes, people who have self-inflicted injuries that result in their deaths. And so by the time you get into investigations, you've seen, and you're sadly, you start building um, uh, defenses, I guess, and you are able to look at some of those things, and it doesn't have uh, any uh, impact on your ability to do your job. And that's the most valuable thing that you can learn through your early years as you move forward, looking at the all the death that you've seen, is for the fact that hardens you and it prepares you to go out and be able to work that crime scene and bring a product to trial that will make sure justice is found for society and for the families and for the victim. That if you let your emotions or you are unable to um, do your job just because of what you see there, no matter how horrible it is, um, that you're able to still do your job and make sure that you're able to collect everything is extremely valuable. So, um, I don't know uh, at some point what all that will mean to me, but um, I've seen my share. Let's see here. Josh Sapai. Mr. Steve, do you think there's more to the story about the rumor Ellie had to return to CS crime scene to recover sticks and branches? With the markings that you indicated be important to keeping the integrity. If some of those sticks and branches had those cuttings on them, absolutely. But regardless of the sticks and branches that they've identified as being moved, I hate that they missed the opportunity to realize if it is that they were placed there, and if they were placed there by the offender on the victim, what possibilities that we have to say that what could have been missed? What if this offender, while he's attacking the victims, and most often does occur, that they cut themselves? And what if his DNA blood profile is on that branch somewhere that you didn't identify? You missed it with luminol or otherwise. Those are my greatest fears. Um, and then, not to mention the possibility of skin cells and everything else that can now, with technology, be identified. So, yes, it's important to collect that stuff. And Bama Sin, in memory of your, thank you. That's very nice of you. Appreciate your support. All right, let's get back out and go back to the live and see what I've missed here. And let's see here. Go back up and get back in my timeline. All right. Okay. All right. We got back in my timeline here now. Whoop. All right. Uh, Dave says I'm an owl. It's good to see you, Dave. Appreciate you being here. Um, go back through here and try to get caught back up a little bit, guys. Thank y'all for being here. Thank y'all for bearing with me. And now we'll go back into the slideshow just a little bit. Get back in there, slideshow. But back in 2022, some of the things I did in this location here that I made note of, that while I was looking in the motion for the Franks hearing, that they mentioned blood spatter on the ground. This is what blood spatter on the ground looks like at night using luminol. You see the little bright little blue areas, and that's the synthetic blood reaction with luminol. Real blood does the same thing. It has this bluish reflection, and you can see it luminesces. And through your photography, you're able to document. And I documented it, and then I brought it in, ran it through a few filters to make sure it stand out a little bit more for the presentation. And this is what arterial spray looks like on a tree. From left to right as I moved, and I was spraying from a um, almost like a turkey roaster uh, squeeze. I don't know, what would you call it? But whatever it is, almost like a syringe that you would pass across the surface in a steady movement, that it creates this type of blood flow, blood pattern identifiable from the arterial spurts. Sometimes it'll look like if it's on a inside of a wall or something, it's almost like a ticker tape. That as the heart pumps, you have your low areas, and then you have your high, your peaks, and your valleys. And I didn't do that. I just flashed across the trees when I was doing the arterial spray. And then some of the transfer stains from the edge of a weapon, from the hands, fingers, and then you have your tool marks of where those thin lines are of a weapon that is stained with blood. And this is what it looks like on luminol. And when I went back in 2023, testing all the areas, and I was spraying it with luminol just last week, this is pretty much what I saw in the total darkness. Darkness. There was none, other than one area, and I was able to see, and I probably would have recognized it even a year later without knowing where to look. And that's on this original test that you can see this passive blood flow, where the gravity of where I intentionally took the syringe and applied a constant source, and let gravity take over and flow down the tree. And I re introduced more blood to that area until I had a very good flow going down that tree. Didn't know at the time that this was going to be mentioned, or even the possibility that this could be part of what would be mentioned months later in a motion to the court, just like the blood stain on the ground, but there being some type of identifiable blood stain on the side of a tree. And so, and this is what it looked like in 2022 when I first photographed it at night with my camera, ran it through the filters. You can see a lot of the darkness on one side. You wouldn't really identify that readily as possible blood, but when you have the luminol, which is one of the presumptive tests that this could be blood, and then you go and follow up with other tests to identify and come to whatever conclusion about that. And then when I returned in 2023, this is now the sizing of this on the left-hand side. I had to blow it up. I had to take the camera system and take it almost within 3 or 4 inches of the tree. Originally, when September of 2022, when I took this fine line, that was about four times the distance, around a foot to 18 inches away from the tree, and I was able to come up with this fine line in September 2022 of the reaction. But when I went back, it was far fainter. The camera had to be brought closer to the luminous light source for the camera to pick up, and I had to let it sit there for 30 seconds and absolutely shutter locked and capture it, and then bring it in and take filters. And that's how come there's a little bit difference in the width of. It's the same. It's just that the camera is 4 times closer versus where it was 2022 versus 2023. All right. So now let's get back over here to chat. If where I'm at, hopefully I haven't missed too much chat, guys. I'm quite a bit behind, but we're going to catch up here. Okay. Uh, thank you, Olivia. Let's see. Oh, did I misspell Googles or goggles? Um, let me see. That's possible. I did. Yeah, Googles and goggles, guys. Like I said, I had a lot on my mind today. Good catch. Oh, me. Leave it to me. Didn't even notice that. Like I said, I had other things. on my mind. But thank you guys. Sorry for that. Oh me, like I said, uh, I'm not one above making mistakes. I made a lot of them. I'll make a lot more. I can guarantee you that. We're gonna see a lot of them. Oh, Dave. Oh, uh, try and get some of them started again. I guess I can go ahead and go in there and answer them until I get caught up. Actually, let me do that right quick, and that way I won't have to. Uh, don't know if I got that super sticker. Thank you, Gail. Appreciate it. And Bama, thank you. Appreciate it. Um, it says if someone brought a electric saw with them, that's crazy. It so makes me think more than one person. Do I think an electric saw was brought? If it was, man, that is something. I don't think so. Uh, uh, but it could be, and it's possible. But I do not think that it had anything to do with electric saw. But we'll have to see what he bases that upon, and if there's an expert that backs up that opinion. Is the picture showing with body fluids under different light sources all the same body fluid spot, and it looks different with different light? No, there's three different ones. Let me go up there. I think the one to the furthest left is saliva, center one semen, and the one on the right is urine. Each of them different types of body fluids. All right, now let's get back out of here and go back to live. Yeah, I know. All right. I'll try to just answer the questions as we go through them now. Um, yeah, this is a good point. That it could just be a foldable saw, or even a saw that some of these Rambo type of weapons and knives that it could have been from. Steve, do you think it's odd they said Abby didn't have any blood on her? Yes. And is that true? Don't know. Are they basing that on looking at the clothing only? And under what light sources? And has any chemicals been applied to the clothing? And under what conditions has it been taken into a dark room, luminol applied? And what are the findings then? We just don't know. But if there's absolutely none on her, yes, I will find that extremely odd. But just because an attorney makes a statement for a specific agenda or narrative, don't know. Mr. Steve, will the defense get anywhere with all this new information release? Appears they've gotten taken great and made great gains with the social media because they've created a storm of information out there that is has people questioning anything and everything about the case. Was that their intent? Their intent? Um, I hope that they haven't um, created this just for the social media platform. Hopefully, they did it with good intentions to bring information to the court's attention and not to the social media platforms. Uh, Trying to get caught up here, guys. Like I said, Steve, when you said that law enforcement used real blood before you had synthetic blood, it was animal blood, right? Yes. I think at that time it was horse. We did a lot uh, and but I believe almost all of that was horse because we had to be able to be qualified to go in and testify as far as an expert with blood spatter and things. You had to use real article of blood, and so I think that's what we used at that time. I know that's what we used at that time during most of my training. Oh man! But appreciate everybody being so mindful in chat and everything. Kamala Norris. Do you think R.A. Rich Allen is going to trial? I still think so, even with this defense. I really don't think defense is going to do well going down this path, in my opinion. No, and um, uh, will it go to trial? Who knows? What can they suppress? What evidence? Is there something extremely that if they can't get, and I think it's more than just the firearm that they're worried about from Richard Allen's house. I have that's just pure speculation, but there's great need to be fearful of just the firearm itself for the fact that the bullet, if that bullet is able to get before the jury and the jury takes the word and all the testimony of the state's firearm expert that this bullet is from Richard Allen's gun, that by itself is huge and has to be suppressed and or attempted to be suppressed by the defense. No holds barred. Try to do everything they can, and so that by itself is important. But is there more? I would expect so, or at least I hope so. That if he is the one that's responsible for these homicides, that if they found other items, the defense has to throw everything at it to make sure that they can try to get it suppressed. If a wounded person was in a flight running, would it be possible for blood to be almost absorbed by clothing and leave little to no trail? No, the clothing would be just part of the blood trail. And there's, you know, as you can see that whenever how many of us have looked at our arm after being cut by a limb or briar or something, that you look at your arm 20 minutes later and you see a blood trail that is partially dried, or even 5 minutes later. And it will, even under clothing, sometimes that effect will happen. So, no, I don't think there would be a trail, more than likely, or what I've experienced. Yeah, $5 super sticker. I don't know if that's the same one or not, but we thank you regardless if it's not. Yeah, Chris was assisting me because I've been so busy and so much going on that he did speed up the that, and he sent me some video back for me to upload, and he did. He sped up the first part of it, and it does remind one of the Benny Hill classics. Uh, what did Yona ask? Yona, Mr. Stever, most criminals sober or impaired when they commit these horrible acts. Your experiences, please. Um, you know, a lot of times they say that part of the alcohol or some type of substance abuse is part of the triggering. And are they doing that to gain that last bit of courage, or not, or just not the edge off of whatever, and it feeds their fantasy? I don't know that. Dr. Susan would probably have a little bit better understanding of that, and we'll have her again, and we'll be talking about stuff such as that um, from their perspective of it. From my experience, I've seen, and it depends a lot about the motive. Now, you do have a lot of motives of out of anger and things when there is alcohol or drug influences involved in crimes where people are at certain parties or establishments and they have outrages and homicides occur. But when we're talking about predators, psychopaths, seeking out individual victims, does it still play a part in it? I would believe so, more so than most people would probably ever realize. But I'm speculating on what training I received and what was told to us over the years. So we'll find out. I'll get with one that knows a lot more than I. Yeah, Mr. Steve could have been checking to see if we were paying attention. That was it. That's it. Absolutely, that was part of my master plan. Thank you, Miss. Give me an out. No, I just, I have a disconnect between my brain and my fingers at times, and if it doesn't hit the spell check, uh, the slide didn't know if I meant Google or goggle, so it didn't matter. I think it's funny. Absolutely. Oh God, I'll have you have in my situation, you better learn to laugh at yourself because it it occurs quite often. Oh man. And if the worst thing, and Mrs. Steve will testify to this, if the worst thing that can happen in my day is I misspell goggles, it's a plus. It's a win-win day, guys. That's the worst thing I've done today. Oh, Molly Molly, True Crime Web. As retired like Ellie, what is your opinion of defense revealing detailed information about the crime scene and wounds, and if they're factual? Um, that would be left up. It's now out of law enforcement hands. Law enforcement, whatever is going to be created, whatever is going to be doing, um, is um, is done, and it is out of the hands of law enforcement in their opinions. Would they be unhappy and say this is creating some additional problems for us? Probably, but um, the court and the judge will handle if anything was inappropriate and done wrong. The courts will handle it. The judge will take care of it, and we'll see. So, see if that comes to pass. If not, then there's no you know uh, no harm, no foul. I guess. Let's see here. What? Okay. Um, we got Kamala Norris has donated 5 memberships, and Blackwood donated 5 memberships also. Thank y'all for that. Appreciate it. Trying to get caught up on my phone also. There's all kind of good stuff going on. Oh goodness. Um, hey, Steve, I believe people used to, this is from Izzy Garza, hunt Ron Logan's property. The cut branch could be from hunters clearing a shooting lane. Absolutely. And, but the looking at those cut marks, saw marks, and the timeline. That's what part of my video, the or last presentation on one of my previous show, that I was demonstrating that and showing that they will be able to go out there and test and see how long that cutting occurred. or give a pretty good guesstimate. I mean, there's experts, there's lab techs, there's people out there that know everything there is to know about what happens when you cut a limb in stages, just like how a injury heals with a human, and you have certain stages of bruising or wound healing. That the same would happen on a tree, and so they'll be able to go out there and look at that. And if that's the case, there's an expert out there that will know what that timeline is. Southern Gal is a member for 7 months. Thank you, appreciate that. I'm trying to get caught up. I'm only 6 minutes behind, guys. The chat here is always great. It's even more fun on Morning Watch. Does he still have Morning Watch? I haven't noticed it for a while. Yeah, I've been so busy and so much is going on right now that the Morning Watch has been sidelined for a while. Hopefully, as we get more towards getting everything packed and ready and listings and selling and moving, that I'll get back to that routine. I like the way I had to tease you, Steve. I couldn't help it. The Google machine was engaging in self promotion. That's priceless. Yes, everybody's against me, including my Google machine. Yeah, let's see here. True Crime Web. Are you going to CrimeCon next year in Nashville? It all depends on different scheduling and where I'm at and what cold cases are going on. And it all depends. I wasn't able to get down there for Florida. And so at some point, um, I would love to go and just to see and meet people that are dedicated and have an impact on so much in the web sleuth world, and because there's so many great people at CrimeCon that has such an impact, and they're known around the world, and they're people that everyone looks to for answers. So they absolutely have a great impact on what we see in social media. I think if I missed anyone, I hope I didn't, but I got caught up, guys. We've been here just over an hour, and um, but I want to thank everyone and for the donations and for the support, the views, thumbs up, subscriptions, subbing to the channel. We appreciate everything. I'll always thank everybody for being so respectful in the chat and welcoming those that are new to the channel. And so if you like it, make sure you share. And I hope to see y'all soon. And y'all take care and be safe out there, guys. See y'all soon.